is this demonic, or is it biochemical? Is it something that should be prescriptive in terms of how we handle it, or should it be, prayerful and that's how we handle it? Or is there some fuzzy line in the middle that this issue of mental health really straddles?
Hey everybody, welcome back to The Pursuit. Jeff Hutchin here with John Saborov, and we've taken a little break. We took a little vacation, and normally we'd record an episode in advance, but things just got a little bit out of hand for us this past week.
Let's call it out for what it is. You and I both need to apologize to two people in particular.
Yeah,
our moms.
That's right.
Because both of them have. What happened to The Pursuit?
Yeah, no, my mom just rang my phone off the hook, and. So she's wondering
Mama,
what the heck was going on.
Mamas, we're sorry.
But we're back. We're back. And today, actually, we're going to be stepping into a pretty sober topic.
Yes, we are.
That's going to be challenging, I know, for both of us as we talk about today. But one of the things we've kind of committed to one another and committed to the people that watch The Pursuit is we're going to go places where a lot of people don't go. We're going to talk about issues that don't get discussed that often. And not that we're going to have all the answers, right? And today might be a great example of that. But we're going to surface a topic. We're going to talk about it, and hopefully it'll challenge you, the listener, to be able to kind of dive a little bit more into your beliefs and the things we're called to in dealing with certain issues. But before we get to that, let's talk a little bit about our presenting sponsor today. It is our friends over at Realty One Group Premier, and they are incredible at providing you information and help and assistance to come alongside you in one of the biggest decisions you're going to make in real estate, and that is, how are you going to mortgage? How are you going to pay for this thing? Right? Matter of fact, we're getting ready to buy a second property, an investment property.
Yep.
And these guys over there are going to really help us out. Dana and the group over at Premier are going to help us out on this, and we're excited. And matter of fact, I got a call with them this afternoon. How serendipitous is that?
Serendipitous?
Yeah. I don't even know if that
on
applies.
On a Monday, that's pretty good.
But, Dana and their group are amazing. They take great care of you, and they will definitely put your needs first. So make sure you reach out to them at realty1grouppremier.com.
I'm not actually looking that website up right now. I'm just going to dictionary.com and
see what serendipitous means.
Serendipitous, yeah.
I know it's a big word.
Okay, all right.
It's a big word for a Monday.
All right.
So, and by the way, just as a side note, I want to apologize in advance because things are getting a little bit more active here around the studio. We're in a co-working space for those that haven't been here before.
Yep.
Things are starting to get a little bit busier. So outside, we've got a meeting going on. We're going to do our best. These are great microphones.
They are.
So hopefully you're not going to pick up other voices. And we have the Red Baron.
We got the Red Baron.
Outside.
Yeah. Shout out to the Red Baron up there somewhere.
Yeah, we work near Centennial Airport. And it seems like every time we turn on the microphones, the Red Baron starts practicing above us, doing flybys and
aerial
all that kind of stuff. So,
what do they call?
Yeah,
acrobatics
and all that kind of
this stuff.
But anyway,
and by the way, they may actually hear an espresso machine as well.
It's very
occasionally.
Possible. It's very possible.
So we're sitting here right next to. There's the Red Baron on cue. Do you hear
flying by.
All right.
Well, let's get into today's topic, and it's really kind of hard to even introduce this topic because it's something that you and I have been discussing for a while. And if we individually and together we studied the book of Revelation quite a bit, and one of the things that it talks about is literally people are going to begin to lose their minds as the end times becomes closer and closer. And I think what that's going to translate to is a greater level and propensity for mental illness in our culture.
Yeah, you know what? There's two scriptures that I think about around that says around the end times. It says, "In the last days, the knowledge of the glory of the Lord shall cover the earth like the waters cover the sea." Right, and it also says that people will be ever learning and never coming into the knowledge of the truth.
Yeah.
That there is this idea that as we get closer, that the truth is going to be it should be there. It's so evident for everybody, but it will escape us. Right, and I don't know if that's because of just the deception at the end, or if this issue of mental illness and mental health, it plays into that, or what. But to your point, I mean, I don't know many people who have not been touched by this in some way.
Yeah.
Have a close family member that may or may not have, tragically ended their life, as sometimes happens in these type situations, but who is nonetheless dealing with things that around mental health that are really derailing to their lives.
Yeah, and I've seen an increase in mental illness. It seems like, to me at least, an increase in mental illness just over the last couple of years. I think COVID had a big part of that.
For sure.
You're seeing a lot of things, the result of COVID, bringing out a lot of weakness in people. And then when a person is battling mental illness, things like COVID and the pandemic that we just went through and the isolation is only going to escalate the problems that we already have, right? And in this particular case, a person that struggles with mental illness is just going to manifest more, and we're seeing that. And specifically, we're not necessarily going to talk about the answers to mental illness. That's not the purpose of this episode, because that's not our expertise.
It's not.
We're not doctors, and we don't study this kind of stuff. However, the angle that we're going to choose to come at this today, I believe, is that from a faith-based standpoint, from a spiritual standpoint, what role does mental illness play in the journey, A? And then also, how do we, let's just call it like it is, how do we as the church, and by the way, let me define the church when I say the church. I don't mean the building that you go to or even the denomination that you claim to be a part of. I'm talking about the body of believers that claim to be followers of Jesus. And that is, how is the church to deal with mental illness? And I would say this, let me propose this right up front, is that I think the church really struggles with the issue of mental illness and what to do with it within the body.
I do as well, right? There's it is that there's a fuzzy line. You and I were talking a little bit earlier, and I'll just say this up front. This touched me in a very personal and deep and hard-hitting way this weekend, as someone in my circle who had struggled and had many reasons why he eventually ended up in a place with where he was bipolar. And I'm going to start naming things, and I don't want to, because as soon as I do that, somebody's going to say, oh, but there's this medicine. Oh, but there's this. Oh, but there's that. I'll just say that there was some trauma that he experienced early in his life that manifested in various ways for him as he got older. He's an adult and incredibly gifted man of God, leading others, in fact. And while he was also under treatment with a professional, a psychiatrist or a psychologist. I don't even know the difference between the two. Do you?
Yeah.
Psychiatrist, psychologist, you do?
Psychiatrists can actually prescribe medicines. A psychologist cannot.
Is that really the only difference? Anyway.
That's the biggest difference.
So he was prescribed medications, and he was seeing a counselor and so forth. Hutch, he took his own life this weekend, and it has caused a reverberation and impact across a community.
Let me just stop and just ask you, how are you doing with that?
You know, it was a hard weekend. I'll just say it like that. To just process through that, and I'm still processing through that. There are levels of grief. I know that there's a grief pathway that all of us that deal with grief have to traverse, and people stay at different stages along that way for different times. And I don't even think it's sequential. I think maybe you're gonna be at every step along that way at some point. And I appreciate you asking, but.
I can see the emotion in your eyes.
Yeah, so what do? We always say, what could I have done differently?
Sure.
What signs should I have looked for? And then to set up our conversation here, what could I do if I had seen those signs and recognized them for what they were?
Sure.
What do you do? And as a church, what do we do? Is it simply enough to say, on one end, refer to that guy to a counselor and get him medicine, okay? Or on the other end, say, this is all spiritual. What we need to do is pray and fast. By the way, which we did. We did fast for him. Did a relay fast, marathon fast, or whatever, and lay hands on. And this is this demonic, or is it biochemical? Is it something that should be prescriptive in terms of how we handle it, or should it be prayerful and that's how we handle it? Or is there some fuzzy line in the middle that this issue of mental health really straddles?
But back to my original comment and opening statement when I said that the church really struggles with the mentally ill. Let me explain, now that you've described that, what I mean by that. And that is, I think, if a person is dealing with alcoholism, the church has done a great job of coming around those that battle addictions. Let's use alcoholism, drug addiction, even sexual addicts. There's a program within the church called Celebrate Recovery, and that's a generalized program. It's a Christianized AA that helps those that don't just battle with alcohol, but battle with any kind of addiction in their faith and in their journey. And they create these support groups, and there's some great curriculum it's wonderful. And the church does a great job, I think, for the most part, of identifying people that struggle with those kind of things and say, hey, we have the pathway for you to help you to recover, to help you to get healing that you need in order to move forward in your journey and to reach your fullest potential. However, I think where the church really struggles is, what do we do with that person? Because typically, when somebody's mentally ill, it tends to manifest itself in a way that's not as socially acceptable. And it manifests itself in usually very damaging ways that aren't easy to categorize, like alcoholism might be. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, or even easy to identify, right? It's easy to see that somebody has a problem with alcohol, to your point. Because it's easy to see, oh, that guy's drunk again, right? He's incapacitated again. But what does mental illness look like?
And to give another analogy, another spin on this thing, one of the things my son, who matter of fact, we just visited him this weekend, he had a chance to come home and spend some time with us, and it was wonderful. And he's transitioning back into the home in September, which is fantastic. But one of the things I've always said about my son, who battles with mental illness, is I almost wish, and I don't, but understand what I'm saying here, I almost wish he had a physical handicap. Because you see somebody that's missing a leg, and you go, oh man, that's tough, that's challenging, and we got to make modifications to help this individual cope in life. And we build ramps for wheelchairs. We do all the things that we need to for the handicapped, and that's wonderful. But we do it because we can see it, right? We can visually see the issue that person is struggling with. Mental illness is that silent handicap. It's that hidden handicap that, we have a hard time seeing, and then secondarily, we really have a hard time treating and dealing with within the body. We're not talking medically here. We're talking about within the body of believers. How do we deal with that person that's battling mental illness?
I think that's well said. And even extending that analogy, it would almost be like in the physical realm. So somebody that is missing a leg, can't do certain things, right? But in this mental illness realm, it's almost like today it's missing a leg. Tomorrow it may be missing an arm, but the leg is fine, right? Because it's morphing, changing in terms of the context in which that person lives, right? Maybe an issue that today manifests on the job, and tomorrow manifests inside of a relationship with a spouse or girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever. And to your point, it is complex, hard to identify, and so I'm going to pose this question back to you: is it enough then to say, you know what, we just need to get that person help and find a psychiatrist, find a counselor, find a psychologist that specializes in bipolar, and get this person on medicine? And is that enough to kind of normalize that person, right? I have an opinion about it. I'd love to hear what you think.
Well, I mean, I can actually speak to that from real life experience of what's going on right now, and without mentioning names and without mentioning our church. We have an individual in our church that we love dearly, and she's battling mental illness. And it created a lot of problems. It manifested itself in like we said, it manifests itself in different ways. Sometimes it's in the form of depression. Sometimes it's in the form of aggression. Sometimes it's the form of manic behavior, where they're always on a high, or they're experiencing a high, and then all of a sudden they crash and they're experiencing deep lows, right, to the point of possibly even considering taking life. And when we encounter those kind of things, it's all over the board, and it's confusing, and it's hard to label, and it's hard to know what to do, and it makes people feel uncomfortable, and it ruffles feathers, right? And let's face it, the church doesn't like its feathers to be ruffled. And so your question was, is it enough to do that? I don't think it's enough to do that. I think there's more beyond that we need to do. Because it's not just about getting help, but it's also about educating the church on this issue of mental illness, and educating the church that, you know what, we're not afforded the luxury, if you want to use that word.
Mm-hmm.
We're not afforded the luxury of just casting someone aside.
No way. No way.
The rest of society may have that luxury or may have that option. But as a body of believers, it says we are to love all.
Mm-hmm.
We are to forgive all. We are to... Let's go there.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to this place right now. I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
How would you define the word mercy?
I would say it is the characteristic of letting somebody off the hook, living in such a way that you always have the posture of letting somebody off the hook for an offense, independent of. It's a decision that I've made in advance to say, I'm gonna live in such a way that I'm not gonna hold offense against anyone.
Okay, good. So it kind of lives in the family. The way you're describing it lives in the family of grace. It lives in the family of forgiveness. It's mercy, grace, and forgiveness kind of all live in the same family. All are a little bit different, but are all related.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're saying?
For sure.
I agree with you. Let me give you even a quicker, maybe more powerful definition of mercy, which I think plays really well into our conversation here. Mercy is active compassion. Active compassion. It's one thing. Let me give you an example of inactive compassion.
Okay.
Inactive compassion is I'm driving down the highway and I see a poor guy on the side of the road who's blown a tire.
Yeah.
And I drive by him and I go, man, that really sucks.
Right. Sucks for that guy.
I feel bad for him, man. He's right on the interstate. It's 90 degrees outside and he's got to pull that tire out and fix it. Mm-hmm. Man, I feel bad for you, brother. And you drive by.
Mm-hmm.
Active compassion, you know where I'm going with this.
Oh, yeah.
Active compassion is saying, you're moved. Man, I feel terrible for you. And you pull over and you get out and you create potentially a conflict for yourself, right? Mm-hmm. Because now you're going to be late to wherever you were going. But you're choosing to involve yourself in a situation where a person is helpless or hopeless and can't provide for themselves.
Yep. And you know what? I was going to ask you this question, which is, would you say that feeling bad for somebody as you're driving by versus pulling over on the side of the road is those two extreme examples? What about prayer for them while you're not? God bless them today. I pray that you intervene, right? That's still inactive, isn't it? So it's got to be there's got to be a prayer for a spiritual element paired up with some sort of action.
Jesus speaks directly to that exact issue right there. It's not enough to see your neighbor who is hungry and thirsty and go, Lord, please bless them.
That's right.
He said, no, I'm asking you to show mercy on them, and I'm asking you to be active in being a part of the solution. And that is prayer, certainly.
Yeah.
But when and where we possibly can, we are to get involved.
Right.
And here's the thing. That's not convenient.
It's not.
And it's countercultural. Because what's the world tell you? It's their problem.
Yep.
Hey, you don't know what kind of person they could be. They could be setting you up for an ambush.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
You don't want to involve you. It's dangerous.
Mm.
Gosh, they're asking for money. You're going to give them $20. They're just going to go buy drugs.
Right.
Right?
Standard
and
stuff.
And certainly all those, and that's what the world teaches us. And that's what the enemy says to us when we're going by. And he says, and too often I have been compassionate, but I haven't been merciful. Okay, I'm just confessing that here. And so what the Lord's really brought to my mind is, you know what? When it comes to the mentally ill, what most people say is flee.
Mm-hmm.
Don't involve yourself there. That's messy. Don't involve yourself. And so when you ask the question, is it enough for the church to say, hey, John, we're going to help you with your mental illness, and we're going to get you a doctor that can put you on a treatment plan? That's wonderful. We need to take it a step further, I believe, as a body of believers. And that's when we have to get involved. It's easy to pawn them off.
Yep.
It's another thing to say, you know what, and I'm going to involve myself in this process. To whatever degree, you need to get involved. And in this particular case, I had a chance to sit down with the pastor because I know this person well that's struggling. And we got a chance to talk through this. And I said, it involves, yes, getting help, but involves accountability. There's got to be an accountability process because this is where the pastor struggles, John. He says, I have to protect my flock. right? And that's true. And he needs to. However, to what degree and to what extent? And I think there has to be an accountability process, and the church has to pursue a path of restoration. And that's just not blind restoration.
Right.
But I'm going to put a process in place that a person can work through with the ultimate goal of restoring them back into the body.
And you know what? Guess what? We don't have to know even the how. So going back to your analogy about the guy on the side of the road with the tire that's blown out, that's a very simple and known antidote for that, right? The approach to fix that is what? Get the spare out of the back and go through the process of changing the tire. Oftentimes, though, if we take that analogy and extend it over to this mental illness realm, we don't know. All we do know, though, is at the end of the day, even if I can offer nothing around expertise, almost like this podcast, if we can't offer anything regarding expertise about how to treat a particular thing, that's not the point. The point is I'm there. The point is it says, nope, I'm not leaving you. I'm not casting you out. I got your back. I'm going to pray for you. I'm going to be in fellowship with you. And I'm here. I am here.
That's a great point. And so that leads us for our final 5 or 6 minutes that we have left on the podcast today. I think it's important we bring this up. Because you mentioned something just a moment ago. You said sometimes the church goes to the extreme to say every form of mental illness is demonic.
Yeah.
And we're going to lay hands on them and cast demons out of it. Is that possible? Yes. Have I seen it? Yes. Have I experienced it? Yes. I've seen all those. I know you have too. That's a very real thing, and that has to be something we need to ask the Father. That's why we have the Holy Spirit, discernment. Father, show us the root of this, and whether it's with a chemical imbalance, whether it's, you mentioned trauma from an early childhood, or maybe even recent trauma that's created mental illness, depression, those types of things, possibly could be that. Here's what I do know to be true. Whether it's purely demonic and it's simply as simple as casting out a demon, and I've seen people that have gone from this to this overnight simply by casting out a demon. It's possible. But here's what I can tell you is this, is mental illness, just like any other struggle in life, mental illness is a doorway and a pathway that the enemy will take advantage of. It's not fair. It's not right, but he doesn't care.
Right.
He doesn't care if we're ignorant. He doesn't care if we're arrogant. He doesn't care if we're sick. If he sees a pathway and he sees a doorway, he'll take advantage of it.
Yep.
So here's what I can say about those that battle mental illness, whether it's trauma-based, whether it's chemical-based,
biochemical, or
is the enemy will use it against us. And so, yes, we need to pray. And so this leads me to the final point, and that is, as the body, as believers, as we encounter those that are mentally ill, one of the things that's absolutely necessary, and we're responsible to do, is to clothe ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we talk about the full armor of God.
Yep.
Right? The helmet of righteousness, the helmet of salvation, the breastplate of righteousness, the belt of faith, all those things. That's part of the process, and it's easy for us to think through that process of making sure that we're armored up. But Romans 13 also talks about, right, in verses 11 and 12 and 13 in that area, it says we are to put aside the deeds of darkness. Mm-hmm. So let me translate it to our conversation. Put aside the ways of this world. Put aside the ways that the world deals with this issue of mental illness. Put aside the deeds of darkness. And he says, armor yourselves or clothe yourselves with the armor of light. Mm-hmm. And if you go on and read on to the end of that chapter, it says, the way we clothe ourselves with the armor of light is we put on Jesus.
Put on Christ.
Put on Jesus.
Yeah.
It's our identity, right? It's the Holy Spirit that's within us. And so the one thing that we need, right, is as we're dealing with those that battle with this, we need to make sure that we're clothed with the armor of light in order for us to encounter what is unknown.
Yep.
You said it. It's unknown. We don't know.
Yeah. So
we need wisdom. We need discernment. We need understanding to know, how is it, Lord, you want me to deal with this particular situation?
Yeah, and I want to make sure that we call that out, because that may seem very strange to some of our listeners right now, right? Put on Christ. What do you mean? So I put on this outfit this morning. Is that, how do I put on Christ, right? Is that a mental attitude? Is it, I've followed all the rules today, so I'm in a good place with Christ? So address, if you would, or you and I can both talk about it, what it means to actually put on Christ.
Okay. Well, I think you started off with a great analogy, so let's start there.
Okay.
This morning, thank God, you were intentional to put on clothing.
Somehow I knew.
I
Somehow I
appreciate
knew.
you not walking in here buck naked.
Yeah.
That would not. You probably would get arrested.
Maybe.
But my eyes would be arrested. I can tell you that. But to the point is, you made an intentional decision this morning to get dressed.
I did.
So it starts with intentionality.
That's right.
This idea of clothing ourselves, right, and putting on the armor of light. It begins with an intentionality. It's picking up our cross daily and following Him. It's making a decision today that today I'm not going to rely on my own strength, my own wisdom, my own knowledge and understanding, but instead, Holy Spirit, I'm going to rely upon you to pull out from me the purpose that you have before me. Here's the deal. You know this. God numbers our days. He knows the things that are going to happen before they happen.
Yes.
Man, that's a beautiful thing.
Yep.
And so if that's true, which it is, then all I have to do is walk in His Spirit, because His Spirit's not surprised with what I'm going to encounter. So therefore, let me finish this thought.
Yeah.
I know you want to say something. If the Spirit's not surprised by what I'm going to encounter, then here's what I know to be true. Here's the promise. He will provide me with what I need in order to carry out His purpose
Totally.
in the moment.
And I love that you said, all I have to do. He said, my burden is easy, my yoke is light.
That's right.
It is supposed to be easy. It is supposed to be all I have to do is press into the Spirit in that morning. We talked about in previous episodes, the secret of abiding under the shadow of the Almighty. I mean, we could talk. That's a whole other episode. Probably need to do like abiding part 8 coming up here. But you know what? You asked me this morning, how, I forgot, what's God speaking to you? I think is what you said. And I said, oh, easy. Let me tell you. I don't know. We're going to be talking about it today, but man, if I don't get those marching orders, if I don't get that sense of God, what is He saying to me today? Then have I put on the armor of light? Have I put on Christ?
You hit on something beautiful, man, and I love the simplicity of it. You said, my burden is easy, my yoke is light. Think about the yoke. The yoke was something they would put on an oxen.
That's right.
To pull a cart. So literally we're clothing ourselves with His yoke. So He says, put on my yoke. And He says, my yoke is very simple. It's 2 things. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. So tap into Him for all your thoughts, all your reactions, all your emotions, all your everything. Mind, emotion, strength. And then He said the second is like the first. Love your neighbor as yourself. So if you were battling with mental illness, how would you want to be treated?
There you go.
And that's how we're to treat others. And He says, here's the cool thing. When you put on my yoke, when you clothe yourself with the armor of light, I will give you whatever is necessary to carry out my task that I have for you. That's encouraging, brother.
Yeah, it is.
And man, I'm sorry. I'm sorry about your friend.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I'm sorry.
I'm
sorry for the grief. The wake left behind by such a decision is devastating.
Yeah, and to have that much to offer, I like to say, man, this guy is a total package. He was.
Yeah.
To have that much to offer to this world, the world got robbed.
Yeah.
The world got robbed.
Yeah. Well, and I said this off camera to you, and I'm going to say it to you for those that are out there as well, is the natural first question is, what could I have done differently, right? And that's not a bad place to go to. But my point to you was, as quickly as you got on that point, get off that point. You need to self-evaluate and go, okay, I need to learn something from this.
That's right.
Take what it is that you need to learn, the Lord wants to show you. Move off of the point quickly, because you're not the one that made the decision.
That's fair.
And here's the important thing is, if you hang on that point of feeling down and depressed and guilty or shameful or whatever it is the enemy tries to put on you, again, what has that done? It's create a foothold for the enemy to take a step further, to create another stronghold in your life. And so my encouragement to you, and my encouragement to anyone out there that is battling through this issue, if you've lost someone recently and you're wrestling with that question, take note of whatever it is the Holy Spirit wants to show you. Move off of it quickly and release that person. And we're to carry each other's burden for a season.
It's so good. You pointed out, we both talked about the yoke is easy, the burden is light. A yoke is something that you use to directionally control an animal.
That's right.
It's where we're going. The burden is a result of where we went.
That's right. That's good.
And so you're right. We should have a yoke that's easy, and that burden should be light.
Amen.
We've got it.
Amen. It's a good word, man.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody. Thanks again for joining us for this episode of The Pursuit. I know this topic was tough. This issue of mental illness is touchy. And I know there's a lot of people that struggle with it themselves. A, B, they have others that are really dealing with this issue. And just know that the Father will give you the strength that you need to persevere and to push through. And there's nothing too big that he can't handle. And so our prayer is with you today. Thank you for joining us. I pray that you just press into this topic and this discussion and allow the Lord to reveal to you what it is he wants to show you. Hey, thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you next time on The Pursuit.